What if numbers could unlock the deepest mysteries of the divine? What if hidden within the mathematics of an ancient journey, we discovered patterns not just of human frailty, but of relentless divine faithfulness? Before we dive, make sure to like and subscribe to the Jesus Speaks channel. And if you've ever wondered about the secrets of heaven, spiritual warfare, or what truly happened before mankind took its first breath, comment 777 below. Your yearning for insight might just mark you as part of a chosen generation searching for truth that pierces beyond the surface. Now, imagine a people forged by miracles, standing at the threshold of promise, 600,000 warriors strong. The children of Israel had watched the Red Sea split wide, Mount Sinai shake, and heaven rain down bread. But even after such wonders, their hearts faltered at the sight of giants. The book of Numbers does not merely record their failure, it whispers, shouts, and sings a much greater story. The story of God's persistence, His order rising out of chaos, His blessing blooming out of curses. Here are lessons that reach beyond ancient wilderness, right into our modern struggles and questions. Everything begins with a census. 1 year and 1 month after their escape from Egypt, God spoke in the wilderness. The moment was precise, the task clear. Moses and Aaron were called to count only the fighting men, those 20 years and older, those able to march into battle. This was not a casual head count, but a declaration of readiness and identity. Each tribe took its turn, each man declaring his heritage and his age. Judah led with the largest force. Issachar and Zebulun flanked him, and together every tribe presented numbers. Reuben, Simeon, Gad, and so forth, until over 600,000 warriors stood ready. Yet one tribe is conspicuously absent: the Levites, set apart for something altogether different. As the numbers rise, God's organizational brilliance unfolds. The tribes are arranged mathematically around the tabernacle. Judah commands the east, a royal tribe embraced by Issachar and Zebulun, a powerful coalition of 186,400 warriors. On the south, Reuben leads Simeon and Gad, forming a defensive alliance with 151,450 fighters. Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin create the western flank, their combined strength reaching 108,100. Dan, Asher, and Naphtali secure the north, marshaling 157,600, vigilant against any northern threat. At the heart of this formation lies the tabernacle, God's dwelling among them, encircled by the Levites as an inner ring of guardianship. From above, the camp presents the shape of a perfect cross, declaring visually what words cannot contain, that God's presence centers everything. But there is more. The Levites, substitutes for every firstborn in Israel, are divided into Gershonites, Kohathites, and Merarites. Gershonites care for soft furnishings, the curtains, screens, and covers that veil the sacred. Kohathites carry the holy furniture, the ark itself, but may not touch it lest they die. An awe-inspiring reminder of holiness and danger entwined. Merarites bear the structure itself, the boards, bars, and sockets that frame the physical form of worship. Collectively, 22,300 Levites become God's service team, trading weapons for sacred responsibilities. Purity, both physical and moral, stands at the forefront of God's demands. Anyone with a skin disease, abnormal discharge, or who has touched the dead must be sent outside the camp. This separation is not cruelty, but necessity. God's holiness cannot cohabit with contamination. Even marriage is bounded by supernatural law. When suspicion of adultery arises without evidence, the priest administers the bitter water test, a supernatural ordeal that places human faithfulness in God's hands. The outcome may bless or curse, but the judgment is always divine, closing loopholes with heaven's justice. But then, the story pivots toward voluntary devotion. The Nazirite vow, open to men and women alike, demands abstinence from wine and all grape products, forbids haircuts, and bars any contact with the dead, even close family. These vows separate the faithful even further, inscribing visible and invisible marks of surrender. When the vow concludes, the Nazirite shaves his head and offers the hair upon the altar, symbolizing that even personal pride, even one's crown, is consumed by consecration. This radical devotion foreshadows sacrificial love, setting the stage for generations seeking intimacy with the divine. Tribal leaders soon arise, with extravagant generosity, offering identical gifts over 12 days. Silver platters, gold pans filled with incense, choice animals, and grain for the altar. The repeated offerings are not monotonous. They are a deliberate display of unity, reminding the nation that before God, all are equal. Each leader's gift underscores both personal dedication and communal cohesion, weaving individuals into a tapestry of worship. Before service begins, the Levites endure a dramatic threefold purification, sprinkled with water mingled with ash for atonement, shaved of every hair, and dressed afresh. Then comes the ceremonial wave, with Aaron lifting the Levites before the Lord, a gesture of total surrender, as if each man is both an offering and a recipient. Their service is marked by sacrifice. Young bulls stand as sin and burnt offerings, and hands laid on heads transfer both guilt and purpose. At every stage, the narrative reminds us that purity and proximity to God are never accidental. They are cultivated, deliberate, often costly. Divine navigation guides every step. The pillar of cloud covers the tabernacle by day, shining as fire at night. Its movements dictate the journey. The people must wait in patient obedience for days, months, even years, moving only when the cloud moves. Silver trumpets sound commands. One call summons leaders. Two calls gather the whole assembly. Distinct blasts direct the camping and the march. And, in times of war, sound alarms before battle. These sacred signals blend spiritual governance with practical guidance, marrying sacredness and strategy. Yet, as soon as order is established, the seeds of rebellion sprout. Complaints begin. First vague murmurs, then pointed demands for meat, for variety. They remember Egypt's food, but forget its chains. God's answer is both gracious and alarming. Quail flood the camp, enough for a month, until abundance turns to plague. Death follows indulgence, proving that wishing for what God forbids never ends well. Even family cannot shield from betrayal. Miriam and Aaron challenge Moses, desiring equal authority. God responds with a mark of leprosy upon Miriam, highlighting both justice and mercy. She will be healed, but must endure shame and isolation, restored only after humility. Moses' unique relationship with God, face to face, not through visions or dreams, sets him apart. Leadership is not grasped by ambition, but conferred by divine appointment. This wilderness journey does not merely recount history, it beckons each of us to reflect. Do we trust the patterns of God's order? Even when we are counted, cleansed, and tested, do we recognize faithfulness? When provision tastes monotonous, when leadership feels unfair, or when devotion demands more than comfort. The story in Numbers is not locked within ancient text. It pulses within every seeker's heart. As we move deeper, keep these questions alive. And if this first section stirs something in your soul, remember to like and subscribe to Jesus Speaks, and let your voice be heard in the comments. The journey has only begun. In the heat and dust of the wilderness, the story unfolds, layer by layer, revealing not only the flaws of the human heart, but also the unwavering thread of divine faithfulness that weaves through every trial, every law, every journey. As the sun beats down, the children of Israel are asked again and again, whom will you trust? Will you cling to provision and presence, or will you grumble in the face of what you do not understand? The answers, writ large in the spaces between miracles and missed opportunities, offer lessons not just for them, but for anyone daring to journey deeper into faith. When God chose the Levites, it set the stage for a new order, a tribe reserved for spiritual duties, not for battle. The Levites became living substitutes for Israel's firstborn, each family entrusted with sacred responsibilities. Gershon carried the shimmering curtains and veils. Kohath bore the sacred furniture, the ark itself, though forbidden to touch it, lest they die, and Merari lifted the heavy beams, sockets, and frames. No task was too small, no burden without holy significance. This division, purposeful, precise, echoes through every detail. God's presence in the midst requires purity, readiness, and relentless attention to his command. Purity itself becomes a matter of communal survival. Anyone marked by disease, discharge, or the shadow of death is sent out from camp, preserving holiness at all costs. Even marital faithfulness is safeguarded by supernatural means. For suspicion without proof, the bitter water test transfers judgment from human courts to divine hands, and the consequences, either curse or vindication, are administered by God Himself. It's a sobering reminder. True justice, ultimate healing, and the deepest secrets of the heart belong to the one who sees beyond surface appearances. If ever there was space for radical devotion, it comes in the form of the Nazirite vow. Whether man or woman, the Nazirite chooses separation. No wine, no grapes, no raisins, and no vinegar made from wine. Long, untouched hair serves as a visible sign, while even mourning is prohibited, not for father, mother, or sibling. Dedication to God must surpass even the deepest natural bonds. And at the end of the vow, the newly shorn hair is offered over the fire, a physical surrender of identity, pride, and personal narrative. This surrender echoes the call of Psalm 139, where the psalmist proclaims, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts, to devote oneself so fully that every comfort is left behind. This is the path of the Nazirite, and then a celebration, a vibrant display of tribal unity and equality. For 12 days, each tribe delivers identical offerings: silver platters, gold bowls brimming with incense, sheep, rams, young bulls, and grain. Day after day, the gifts repeat, not in monotony, but in beauty, underscoring that in God's eyes, every tribe, every person, every offering matters. It's the rhythm of worship, the quiet refrain that, regardless of rank or role, value is neither earned nor bargained. It is bestowed by grace. Before service begins, the Levites undergo a dramatic transformation. Sprinkled with water, mixed with ashes, a powerful symbol of cleansing, they shave their entire bodies, ridding themselves of every trace of past identity, and wash their garments, stepping into fresh new purpose. Aaron lifts them up as a wave offering before the Lord, physically presenting them as wholly surrendered, living sacrifices, embodying the words later echoed by Paul in Romans 12. Present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. One bull becomes a sin offering, another a burnt offering, and the Levites lay their hands on the heads of each, participating not just in purification, but in an act of atonement. The service is clear. 25 to 50 years marks the span of active ministry. Beyond that, the rhythm slows, the baton passes, and community memory extends the legacy. Divine guidance comes in two supernatural forms: the cloud and the trumpets. The cloud by day, a fiery glow by night, signals when to move and when to stay, sometimes for mere hours, sometimes for months or weekends. The unpredictability of God's timing tests patience, but always demands obedience. The trumpets, hammered from silver, issue signals. One summons leaders, two the full assembly, another triggers the march, and yet another blares in times of battle. The community moves not by whim or democracy, but by unmistakable divine order. Yet, after all this careful organization, the honeymoon of faithfulness gives way to ancient patterns of complaint. The people grumble, not for the last time. Divine fire burns through the outskirts. Moses intercedes, and the fire is quenched. But dissatisfaction grows into dangerous longing. The mixed multitude, those who joined Israel from Egypt, infect the camp with cravings for meat, remembering the food of slavery while glossing over its cruelties. Manna, miraculous though it is, cannot satisfy their restless hearts. God responds, not with simple rebuke, but with abundance. Quail flood the camp, the least gather more than enough. The miracle, however, comes at a cost. The meat turns to poison, and a plague sweeps through the congregation. In one bitter moment, fulfillment brings death, leaving graves in its wake. A haunting lesson that unchecked desire, discontentment, and nostalgia for the past can destroy what promise alone sustains. Even Moses feels the strain of leadership, his lament rising in exhaustion and desperation. Why have you afflicted your servant? The Lord responds in grace, appointing 70 elders to share the burden, a reminder that no single leader should bear the weight of many, and that leadership itself is meant to be multiplied, shared, and supported. Just when it seems the journey is at its breaking point, betrayal comes from within Moses' own family. Miriam and Aaron question his unique authority, cloaking jealousy in concerns about equality. But God distinguishes Moses from all other prophets. With him, I speak face to face, clearly, and not in dark sayings. The intimacy of divine friendship sets Moses apart, and when Miriam is struck with leprosy, the lesson rings clear. Humility, not ambition, marks true greatness. Moses prays for Miriam's healing, and God grants mercy, but not without a period of public shame and isolation. The price of pride is always higher than expected, and restoration demands both humility and surrender. The march toward promise resumes. Spies are sent into Canaan, not by Moses' initiative, but by God's command. Each tribe chooses its finest, sent to scout the land of giants, fortified cities, abundant fruit. Their instructions are precise: survey, assess, and bring back bounty. A single cluster of grapes so large that 2 men must carry it between them. But upon returning, the fear of giants eclipses the memory of miracles. 10 spies cower, while only Joshua and Caleb urge faith. The people, ignoring evidence of abundance, descend into panic and rebellion, longing for the safety of Egypt over the risk of promise. They vote to return to slavery, a collective rejection of God's word. Joshua and Caleb tear their clothes, pleading for courage, but the crowd turns violent, ready to stone the faithful. It is then that the glory of God appears, and judgment falls, a whole generation sentenced to die in the wilderness. 40 years for 40 days of faithless spying. Only 2, the faithful spies, will survive to see promise fulfilled. Yet even as consequences set in and promises appear to delay, God reveals hope. Laws for life in the promised land are spoken not as if, but when. Every detail, every instruction for offerings, feasts, and worship presumes fulfillment. God's word, tested by rebellion, holds steady. The rhythm emerges. Generational failure is not the end. The promise awaits those willing to walk patiently in faith. As the Israelites journey through their wilderness, the lessons gather. Trust roots itself not in constant miracles, but in obedience to routine. Rebellion springs from a faith that refuses to see beyond giants, and purity, physical, moral, and spiritual, remains essential to drawing near to God's presence. The second section closes with a quiet challenge. In the waiting and wandering of life, are we driven by yearning for comfort, or by the deeper devotion that sees beyond each obstacle, each craving, each delay, to the faithfulness promised on the other side? And if these stories resonate, consider liking and subscribing to Jesus Speaks. You are not alone in asking the hard questions and searching for deeper answers. There is a community, a journey, and a promise still unfolding. One step, one lesson, one faith-stretching moment at a time. Let's step deeper into the wilderness, where shadows lengthen and the lessons of leadership become raw, costly, and transformative. The journey of the Israelites intensifies, demanding wisdom, faith, and relentless perseverance. In these chapters, struggles for power, the sting of jealousy, failures of trust, and the unpredictability of divine justice converge. Through every episode, the story presses us to ask, what does it mean to surrender, to lead, and to trust when the world turns upside down? It starts with a rebellion, a test of true authority. Korah, A Levite already distinguished by his priestly role grows dissatisfied. Together with Dathan, Abiram, and notable men of the community, leaders respected, men renowned, they confront Moses and Aaron. Their question seems reasonable. Practically democratic, all the congregation is holy. Why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly? But beneath the surface, jealousy festers. Korah and his company aren't seeking equality, they're grasping for power and recognition. In every generation, the temptation remains to covet what isn't granted, to resent the gifts God gives to others. Moses' response is poignant and profound. He does not retaliate with anger or defend his own honor. He falls on his face before the Lord, turning first to prayer before attempting human solutions. Here, biblical leadership shines. True authority isn't seized, it is received, stewarded, and ultimately surrendered, often at great personal cost. Moses proposes a test. Each challenger is to bring a censer and offer incense before the Lord. This isn't a popularity contest. It is a moment for divine clarity, an invitation for God to reveal His will unmistakably. The outcome is dramatic, even terrifying. As Moses speaks, the earth splits open without warning. Korah, his allies, and their families are swallowed alive, the ground closing over them in a final, irrevocable judgment. A fire blazes forth from the Lord, consuming 250 men who dared to offer unauthorized incense. The spectacle is both warning and instruction. God affirms His choice of Moses as leader and Aaron as high priest. Authority, in the eyes of God, is not merely function, it is a calling, sealed by divine selection and maintained only by humility and obedience. Yet, the hearts of the people remain restless. Even after the deaths, questions persist. Why Aaron? Why not others? So a new test is devised. Each tribal leader submits a rod inscribed with his name, and Aaron's rod is placed for the tribe of Levi. These rods are left overnight within the sanctuary in the presence of God. The sign given is biological, supernatural. A rod sprouts buds, blossoms, and ripe almonds all in one night. Only Aaron's experiences this miracle, a visual symbol that true spiritual life flows from God's choice, not human ambition or striving. His rod is kept as a perpetual sign against future rebellion, a silent testament. Divine appointment cannot be imitated or usurped. In the wilderness, God's concern is not only for authority, but for purity and restoration. Physical death is frequent, so laws for purification are given with great detail. A red heifer, without blemish and never yoked, is slaughtered outside the camp. She is burned with cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet. Ashes from this offering are carefully gathered. When someone is defiled by contact with the dead, these ashes are mixed with water and sprinkled. The ceremony is more than a ritual. It is an embodied grace, a tangible way for the community to recover after loss, to rejoin the camp, to become clean enough to stand before the divine presence once again. Even in judgment, the door to restoration is never closed. The wilderness reveals not just Israel's external battles, but the internal war within every heart. The old generation fades away, a new one rises, but the complaints remain hauntingly familiar. As the people journey around Edom, frustration and fatigue trigger a renewal of grumbling. They assault God's provision, calling the sacred manna worthless bread. Their contempt leads to catastrophe. God sends venomous serpents among them, and many die. But as cries for mercy rise, God's remedy is surprising, simple, even paradoxical. Moses is instructed to craft a bronze serpent and set it on a pole. Anyone bitten need only look at the serpent and be healed. No elaborate sacrifices, no magical words, just a look of faith, a shift in perspective from despair to trust. Healing comes through humble dependence, a lesson echoed centuries later when the cross becomes the ultimate symbol of salvation through faith. This generation faces tests their parents could not overcome. At the waters of Meribah, lack of faith strikes even the most faithful. God instructs Moses to speak to the rock so water might flow. But Moses, exhausted by relentless complaints, acts in anger. Rather than speaking, he strikes the rock twice. Water bursts forth in abundance, but disobedience stains the miracle. The cost is devastating. Moses and Aaron will not lead the people into the promised land. In a moment, years of longing and labor unravel. The lesson is as eternal as it is urgent. Position and proximity to God do not exempt leaders from accountability. Every act, every word, every response matters. With Aaron's impending death, the torch of priesthood must pass. On a mountaintop ceremony bathed in holy silence, Moses strips Aaron of his sacred garments and places them upon Eleazar, Aaron's son. The transfer is public, solemn, and heartbreaking. Aaron dies on the mountain, not with the vestments of honor, but ordinary clothes, reminding us that every calling is an act of stewardship, never personal possession. Israel mourns for 30 days, the length of corporate grief matching the depth of communal affection. As enemies block Israel's path, something fundamental shifts. The generation who once cowered now rises to courage. When King Arad attacks, the Israelites vow to God, and victory follows. Sihon and Og, powerful monarchs with fortified kingdoms, each fall to this new confidence, to a faith finally tethered to obedience rather than complaint. God's people, learning not to run, but to trust, experience triumph not by might, but by surrender and prayer. Yet, even in triumph, new threats emerge, not just external, but spiritual. King Balak of Moab, rattled by Israel's conquest, seeks supernatural aid. He summons Balaam, a renowned prophet, hoping for a curse. But God turns curse into blessing. Line after line, Balaam cannot speak against whom God has blessed. Within Balaam's oracles is a stunning prophecy about a star that will rise from Jacob, a scepter from Israel, foretelling a king and a victory yet to unfold in cosmic time. Blessing remains, even when enemies scheme. Purpose cannot be thwarted by human design. But then, seduction from within. Moabite women entice the men of Israel into both sensual and spiritual compromise. The result is devastating. Thousands die in a plague, born from deception and idolatry. In the midst of repentance, one Israelite brazenly brings a foreign woman into the camp, flaunting rebellion and triggering divine wrath. Phinehas, bearing the legacy of Aaron's priesthood, acts decisively, ending the plague and earning a covenant of peace. Purity is not merely a private concern. It becomes a public act, sometimes demanding courage that stands alone. After the reckoning, God commands another census. The numbers are nearly identical to the beginning, but the faces are new. An entire generation has passed. Only Joshua and Caleb remain, faithful witnesses to what God can do through trust and endurance. Within the census, an important legal challenge arises. The daughters of Zelophehad, whose father died without sons, plead for inheritance. Their case brings fairness and justice to the forefront. God's law provides for women's property rights, expanding the boundaries of grace in the midst of ancient strictures. Finally, as the wilderness journey reaches its end, succession is needed. Moses, forbidden from entering the land, lays his hands on Joshua, imparting authority through public prayer and spiritual affirmation. The laying on of hands is more than ritual. It's the transmission of mantle, memory, and hope. Israel's future is secured, not by one man's strength, but by the continuity of calling and the faithful passing of leadership from old to new. Through rebellion, testing, heartbreak, and hope, the heart of Numbers pulses with the question faced by every seeker: will we accept God's order, honor His choices, and trust His ways, even when they diverge from human expectation? Are we willing to lay down ambition, embrace humility, uphold purity, and prepare for promise, even in the barren seasons? As we journey onward, remember, deep leadership is a surrender, not an entitlement. True succession is service, and every wilderness, however daunting, holds within it the seeds of blessing, healing, and destiny for those who listen, trust, and dare to be faithful. If this resonates, let your voice be heard. Like, subscribe, and help others discover the treasures hidden in the wilderness. The greatest stories are never finished. They live on in every heart, shaped by faith, humility, and love. From the outset, there's a striking emphasis on communal purity, both physical and moral, that lays the foundation for everything that happens next. God instructs Moses to expel from the camp anyone with skin disease, bodily discharges, or ritual impurity from a dead body. This isn't mere hygiene. It's about keeping God's dwelling among His people completely pure. The people must regularly self-examine, and when impure, accept separation. No exceptions for rank, gender, or occupation. The exile is temporary, but its message is powerful. Living in the midst of a holy God means that every member bears responsibility for the spiritual health of the community. It's a system designed to guard against not only physical disease, but spiritual contamination, constantly reminding Israel that divine presence requires vigilance and humility. But Israel's system of purification reaches even deeper, touching on the most private corners of life. The marriage relationship. God provides an extraordinary ritual for a husband who suspects his wife of adultery. If suspicion exists, but proof is lacking, the couple goes before the priest to perform the bitter water ordeal. The wife must drink holy water mixed with dust from the tabernacle floor. If she is guilty, a curse will physically afflict her and serve as a sign of God's judgment. If she is innocent, she remains unharmed and may bear children. In a culture where suspicion could destroy a woman's life, this ritual offers a mechanism for divine justice, taking the ultimate verdict out of human hands and placing it in God's. It echoes throughout Israel's laws. No person, not even the most vulnerable, is outside the scope of God's justice and care. In the heart of Israel's Sacred economy, a unique path of personal devotion, emerges through the Nazirite vow. Any man or woman, rich or poor, can choose to dedicate a period of life to God through a radical threefold abstinence. No wine or grapes in any form, no haircuts, and absolutely no contact with corpses, not even for a parent or sibling. These restrictions were meant to set the Nazirite radically apart, both visible in their appearance and lived reality. Their long, uncut hair became a public declaration of their vow, and their refusal to mourn the dead meant God's call was even higher than family ties. The intensity of the Nazirite vow made this period one of extraordinary focus and separation, culminating in a ceremony where their grown hair would be shaved, burned with the peace offering, and their vow completed. In a society ruled by family lines, this vow allowed individuals to pursue a direct, intimate relationship with God, modeling extraordinary surrender. As God's people prepare to move, leadership and logistics intertwine with lavish generosity. Each of the 12 tribal leaders brings an identical, extravagant gift for the tabernacle's dedication: a silver platter and bowl brimming with fine flour, a gold pan full of incense, and a roster of animal sacrifices. Day after day, each tribe mirrors the others, displaying unity, gratitude, and commitment. Though the gifts are repetitive, the repetition itself is beautiful. Every tribe, large or small, has equal value before God. This moment of overwhelming unity sets the stage for the Levites' consecration. Before they can serve, the Levites themselves must undergo an elaborate ceremony of purification. They are sprinkled with special water, shave every hair from their body, wash their clothing, and offer sacrifices. The pivotal act is the wave offering, where Aaron lifts the adult Levites and waves them before God, symbolizing that these men are now wholly owned by God, living substitutes for every firstborn male of Israel who was spared in Egypt. The Levites' service has strict boundaries. They may begin work at 25 and retire at 50, ensuring a workforce both mature and strong enough for the tabernacle's intense labor. This model ensures that everything about Israel's most central worship space, service, access, maintenance, is handled with purity, devotion, and sacred rhythm. Guidance for the community doesn't just come from ritual. The Israelites look to a divine navigation system, the cloud over the tabernacle. By day, it shields them from the desert sun and leads them by movement. By night, it glows with the light of God's presence. God's direction can last a day, a month, or a year, whatever the duration. Israel must wait, trusting without complaint or prediction, showing an obedience born of humility and dependence. To coordinate this massive, mobile population, God commands the crafting of 2 silver trumpets. Their various signals organize the camp. Both trumpets bring the entire congregation. One trumpet calls only the tribal leaders. Specific blasts coordinate the marching orders or act as alarms in times of war. This isn't mere ceremony. It's an ancient communication network that binds thousands together in action and awareness, amplifying the unity God desires. Despite the flawless organization and amazing provision, human nature quickly asserts itself. The narrative pivots to complaint and rebellion. It starts small, general dissatisfaction that provokes divine anger and a consuming fire at the camp's edge. But Moses intercedes, the fire abates, and a geographical scar, Taberah, meaning burning, marks Israel's collective memory. Yet soon, deeper cravings emerge, driven by a mixed multitude of Israelites and foreigners who pine for the foods of Egypt: fish, cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, garlic, romanticizing slavery while belittling God's daily manna. Their complaints reach such a fever pitch that Moses himself despairs, pleading with God to take his life rather than leave him bearing such a burden. God answers by dividing leadership. 70 elders will share in Moses' spirit and support his work. But as for the people's craving, they'll get exactly what they want: quail in such excess that it will come out of their nostrils. The tragic result is a divine plague amid abundance. Many die, while meat still lingers between their teeth, and the place is named Graves of Craving, a somber monument to the cost of ingratitude. An even more personal threat follows when Miriam and Aaron challenge Moses' unique connection with God, cloaking their jealousy and criticism of Moses' foreign wife. God himself defends Moses, affirms Moses' special relationship, face to face, not through visions, and punishes Miriam with leprosy. Moses' immediate intercession saves her, but she still spends 7 days isolated outside the camp. The message is clear: both leadership and unity are fragile, and God's choice of leaders will not be questioned lightly. The stakes are raised as Israel arrives at the edge of the Promised Land. Spies are sent to scout Canaan, one leader from each tribe. They return with stunning fruit and verify the land flows with milk and honey. But most also report insurmountable obstacles: mighty inhabitants, fortified cities, and giants. Only Joshua and Caleb urge the people to press forward in faith. The congregation's cowardice turns into overt rebellion. They talk of choosing a new leader and returning to Egypt. God's patience hits its limit. He threatens total destruction, but Moses pleads for mercy. As a result, the older generation is condemned to die in the wilderness, 1 year for each of the 40 days the spies scouted. No one over 20, save Joshua and Caleb, will enter the land. God's justice is measured yet total, and the journey's purpose pivots from conquest to a generation's slow fading. 40 years of wandering as discipline and preparation. In spite of the judgment, God instructs Moses regarding worship and ritual for when the next generation enters Canaan. He assures them that their children will indeed possess the land, providing detailed laws for sacrifices and festivals, reinforcing hope and continuity. The seriousness of God's word is underlined by the story of a man who gathers sticks on the Sabbath. Unsure of the penalty, Moses seeks divine guidance, and the answer is stark. The man must be stoned outside the camp. This harsh sentence signals to all Israel that God's commands are matters of life and death. Obedience isn't optional, and collective discipline protects their future. Leadership is tested again by Korah's rebellion. Korah, a Levite, with Dathan, Abiram, and 250 leaders, challenges Moses and Aaron, arguing that all Israel is holy and leadership shouldn't be exclusive. Their motives are jealousy and ambition. Moses submits the challenge to God. The rebels, Aaron and Moses, will each offer incense, and God will choose. The next morning, after the offerings, the earth opens and swallows Korah's group alive, and fire from God consumes the other 250 men. The warning is final. Leadership appointed by God is not a matter of democracy or popularity, but divine sovereignty. Even after this, doubts linger, so God orders each tribal head to bring forth his staff, only Aaron's rod, representing the Levites and priesthood, blossoms, flowers, and bears ripe almonds in a single night, a miracle impossible in nature, publicly confirming God's choice. In the final section of the book of Numbers, the journey of Israel reaches its climactic conclusion with foundational insights about inheritance, justice, and communal responsibility. This part sharply focuses on the practical and legal preparations God provides for the new life ahead in the Promised Land, demonstrating how divine wisdom shapes every detail of their future society. Women's inheritance and tribal integrity. A new problem arises regarding the inheritance rights given to the daughters of Zelophehad. Since they are permitted to inherit their father's land, there is concern among tribal leaders. If these women marry outside their tribe, the land would pass to another tribe, diluting the inheritance of their original tribe over time. Moses brings the concern before God, and the solution preserves both women's property rights and tribal boundaries. Women who inherit land must marry within their father's tribe, ensuring that land remains within the original tribe's possession. Women's property rights are protected and expanded. Tribal land is preserved generation after generation. Daughters of Zelophehad compulse, marrying within their tribe to maintain integrity of inheritance, justice, protection, and refuge. The closing chapters clarify Israel's justice system for both residents and newcomers. Of the Levites, 48 cities, 6 are designated as cities of refuge, where anyone who kills unintentionally can seek asylum. These cities prevent blood vengeance until a fair trial determines actual guilt or innocence. Cities of refuge distinguish accidental killing, manslaughter, from murder. Justice is upheld by preventing unjust revenge and offering sanctuary. Restoration for accidental killers is limited to the lifetime of the current high priest. Final division and legacy. Israel's record-keeping, division of land, and legal processes become a permanent legacy. Moses, under God's command, documents their journey through 42 camps, their victories, failures, and every key detail. The boundaries of the Promised Land are precisely traced, and structured systems for priestly service, justice, inheritance, and worship are established. This last section encapsulates the wisdom, compassion, and precision of God's plan for a nation set apart. Every law and boundary safeguards both individual rights and communal responsibility. The narrative closes with the daughters of Zelophehad and their tribe joyfully fulfilling God's guidance, embracing a future where each voice and each landholding finds its rightful place. God's justice, mercy, and foresight emerge as the defining attributes for all who will inherit the promise, a lasting model for faith, fairness, and community across generations. Section 6 of the Book of Numbers, connecting seamlessly with the prior section's focus on purity and justice, delves into the special vows of Nazirite, separation, and the radiant blessing of Aaron, highlighting how individuals and the nation as a whole move toward deeper dedication and relationship with God. the Nazirite vow, choosing extraordinary devotion. Numbers chapter 6 introduces a profound way for ordinary Israelites to pursue an extraordinary relationship with God. Both men and women, regardless of age or social status, could take a Nazirite vow, voluntarily setting themselves apart for a determined period or for life. This was God's invitation for personal holiness, distinct from the priesthood or tribal privileges. The vow had 3 striking requirements: total abstinence from wine, alcoholic drinks, grape juice, raisins, fresh grapes, and even vinegar made from grapes. This extended separation from every product of the vine, symbolized clarity of purpose and freedom from earthly pleasure and excess. No shaving or cutting of hair for the full duration of the vow. The Nazirites' uncut hair became a public and visible sign of their consecration to God, setting them apart even physically from their peers. Avoidance of any contact with death, even among close relatives. If a parent, sibling, or other loved one died, Nazirites could not enter the dwelling or attend funerals. This heightened ritual purity demanded that their dedication to God surpassed the strongest familial obligations. When the designated period ended, the law prescribed an elaborate ceremony. The Nazirite presented burnt, sin, and peace offerings at the tabernacle, and then shaved their head at the entrance, placing the hair on the altar fire as part of the sacrifice. This act resolved their vow with both public gratitude and solemnity, showing Israel that God welcomes ordinary people who pursue Him with extraordinary devotion. Aaron's priestly blessing. The heart of divine favor section. 6 climaxes in the instructions for the unparalleled priestly blessing given from God to Moses for Aaron to speak over the people. This is one of the most beloved and enduring passages in Scripture, and its careful placement after the Nazirite vow underscores God's heart for both individuals and the nation collectively. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. Each line reflects a cascading series of God's intentions: blessing and protection, radiance and grace. God's shining face is the ultimate favor, attentive care, and lasting peace. This blessing signals that holiness is not merely human striving. It is the overflow of God's character poured into ordinary and consecrated lives. The priests do not merely wish good things for Israel, they announce and transmit God's favor, peace, and protection, binding the people to God's eternal promises. Section 6 as spiritual progression, like Section 5, which stressed purity and justice. Section 6 reveals the organic outworking of those principles in everyday life. God's order for Israel includes not just issues of justice and social restoration, but also positive invitations to deeper personal commitment, as demonstrated in the Nazirite vow. At the same time, God's grace reaches all His people, not just the especially devoted. Through the powerful words of Aaron's blessing, following every act of worship and dedication. Through Section 6, the narrative moves beyond merely avoiding impurity. It describes how a people can pursue a life saturated by the presence and favor of God. It balances the call to individual holiness with the assurance of communal blessing, a pattern meant for both ancient Israel and every generation seeking to walk in faithfulness. Enduring impact today, the Nazirite vow inspires any follower who wishes to set aside a season for focused devotion, while Aaron's blessing remains a touchstone for liturgy, celebration, and moments of transition throughout both Jewish and Christian tradition. Section 6 thus serves as a bridge between personal discipleship and communal worship, echoing across the centuries as a call to deeper relationship and divine joy. Section 6 continues the story of Numbers with an invitation toward more devotion, more blessing, more peace for every member of the covenant community.